Volo was the one who brought the Paldean Empire to ruin, and he was also the culprit behind the creation of the legendary quartet Ting-Lu, Shi-Yu, Chien-Pao, and Wo-Chien. But there are problems with this theory. Volo lives in Hisui, a region located far away from ancient Paldea, and on top of that, the Ruinous Quartet were first spoken of 500 years prior to Legends of Arceus. Thankfully though, there is more than enough evidence to fight against these discrepancies, and if I'm right about all of this, then Volo's existence in future games is more than just guaranteed. As you know, Volo is part of the Ginkgo Guild during our time in Hisui, and while he might not act the part at times, he's still very much a member. The guild was around for much longer than Jubilite Village. If you head into the Hisuian snow, we can confirm that the merchants were present in the region for far longer than we first thought. But this guild also doesn't originate from the Hisui region, rather somewhere else entirely, which is confirmed by a press release that states this exact fact. So where did they most likely come from? Well, the roots of their name stem from the ancient past. The Ginkgo biloba was a tree species first discovered 290 million years ago. A tree species native to China, which might just signify a connection to an ancient poke like China. The Cobalt Coastlines even has a location that's suspiciously named after them, so I don't think it's a stretch to say that the Ginkgo Landing is where these merchants first arrived via sea. With the knowledge of the Ginkgo Guild's expansive trade network in mind, I'd like you to have a look at the history of the Silk Road, and its not commonly discussed connection to the Iberian Peninsula. The Silk Road was a large trade route connecting the eastern world to that of the western, but not as directly as you might think. It received the sought-after goods through Mediterranean sea routes, where wealthy aristocrats purchased items such as bronze bowls, jade beads, swords, as well as bound books or tablets inscribed with Eastern culture. These items not only bore cultural significance, they were also the artifacts that were purchased from an Eastern trader by Paldea's greedy king. The Paldean Empire began its rule around 2000 years ago, with their first emperor ushering in the Great Age of Exploration. Expeditions were sent to the giant crater that lies in the center of the region, in order to find the treasures rumored to be located inside of Area Zero. While these expeditions were a heavy strain on their resources, with not a single one being even remotely effective, it wasn't even close to being the sole cause of the Empire's ruin. No, the ruin came from the artifacts the ruler decided to purchase with their already dwindling funds. There was a bronze bowl which clad itself in rocks and dirt due to the fear poured into its ancient ritual vessel. Curved beads which accumulated the king's envy clad themselves in fire. Hatred from those who perished to a foreign blade manifested itself in snow and ice. And the grudge of a person, punished to record the evil king's actions on stone tablets, gathered dead leaves around itself to form a Pokémon. These four objects given form wreaked havoc upon the land and its people. The earth split open with huge fissures that ran over 160 feet deep. Seas of lava flooded the land, and flames that burned over 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit burned down the homes of the Empire's people. In the north, avalanches of hundreds of tons of snow caused routes and villages to be destroyed. But not only that, vegetation also dried up, forests withered and died, and fields were turned barren. In order to quell their rage, the king called upon powerful Pokémon wielders to seal them away. But hold on a minute, look a bit closer at what the legends called these saviors, Pokémon wielders. The only person who was ever known to utilize this trainer class is Volo. This once again brings up an important discrepancy. Volo existed 500 years after these Pokemon were already sealed. He couldn't have been the one to train these Pokemon wielders, right? Actually, he just might have. To explain that, we need to take a look at Kogita, a person who claims to be a descendant of the Celestica people, just as Volo does. But these people she talks of, they're no longer the ones that inhabit the Hisui region. This region received its first inhabitants around the same time the Paldean Empire began its rule, so around 2000 years ago. During this time, the people who lived there called themselves the Ancient People of Sinnoh. They worshipped the deity dubbed the Almighty Sinnoh, or what we now know as Arceus. These ancient people of Sinnoh also called themselves the Celestica, and their only evidence of existence exists in the form of 20 old verses. But going back to Kogita's claim of having Celestica blood, is there any truth in it at all? Well, yeah, there is actually. It's found in the same old verses that now lie scattered around the Hisui region. All of them were written by the same person between 1000 to 2000 years ago. The old verses found here heavily allude to Kogita being their author. But how is she still alive during Legends of Arceus then? Well, the second scripture actually records the author's long-lasting lifespan, where they persisted through the disappearance of their loved ones. The person's experience with being left behind heavily mirrors that of Kogita's own description and actions, where she's now seen living alone in the ancient retreat. Old verse 12 holds even more weight than the last one, as it shows us how the author resigns themselves to waiting for an eternity for the one with the mission to appear. Kogita directly references this during your first meeting together, where she states that she'll be able to fulfill her duty at long last thanks to you. There's also another reference to Kogita in the old verses, where the author's relationship to the god of spring, Inamoris, mirrors that of Kogita's own. So if her and the writer are truly the same person, that would make Kogita around 1000 to 2000 years old. So is her lifespan infinite then? No, I don't think so. I think it might just have something to do with ambition. Kogita has had a goal since long ago, that being to aid the one with the mission, you. With that goal completed, I think that her aging continued, finally being freed from this supposed immortality. Though if you have a better idea, then let me know in the comments below. This is just a thought of mine and it has no substantial evidence behind it. So anyway, how does this bloodline's lifespan affect Volo? Well, Volo claims to be of the same blood that flows through Kogita's veins. Their relation to one another is also reinforced by their looks, with them not only resembling one another, but with the two also donning the same teardrop-shaped artifact. There's evidence of Volo's existence in the future, of course. In the Generation 4 games, there was an unused event that allows you to receive the Azure Flute, which you can then use to summon Arceus on the top of Mount Coronet. After you catch it, you can receive some extra tidbits of lore relating to Arceus from a person you'll first encounter inside of Orbur Mine. The person I'm talking about is this hiker, and the most interesting thing about him is not only the fact that the outfit he wears resembles that of the Ginkgo Guild's traveling attire, but the fact that he possesses one of Arceus's plates. I think you can guess where I'm heading with this. What's if this hiker is actually Volo? Now, I know this event was created much earlier than the release of Legends of Arceus, but who's to say that Volo wasn't based on this very character? Of course, there is more evidence than just the attire itself. The last time we get to talk with Volo is after we beat him and Giratina in the Temple of Sinnoh, where he leaves us with one final message. Someday, I'll solve every riddle in the Legends of Hisui's Pokémon, and on that day, I'll stand before Arceus at last. No, I will conquer it. No matter how many years, how many decades, how many centuries it takes me. It's curious for him to say centuries. No one lives that long, but, well, maybe he does. Imagine this. An older Volo, now nearing the same age as Kogita. It's been years since the events of Pokémon Legends of Arceus. After his defeat to the player, he inscribed all of the knowledge of the plates he remembered into a book. And then, hundreds of years later, he sees a champion on the news. A champion who bears the same name and face of someone he met oh so long ago. Then they meet, and he realizes that this person isn't the same player he met all those centuries ago, but he's similar enough. So he ends up telling you about what he's discovered since then. Even while you might not know him, he just needs the player to know it. To know that he didn't fail in the end, even if it isn't the same person who beat him and Giratina on the peak of Mount Coronet. Oh, and remember when I talked about the Silk Road connecting the eastern regions with that of the Iberian Peninsula, where Paldea lies? That's how I think Volo was able to interact and reach the greedy king of the west. But he didn't just train the Pokemon wielders to withstand the calamity that befell the Empire. He was also the one who caused it in the first place. It was a trial run to his actions in Hisui. He needed to be able to fill the role of a good guy in order to execute his plans successfully. Through his trade network's connections, he arrived in the Paldean Empire, offering the king a bronze bowl, curved beads, the finest blades, and even tablets that could be used to record the ruler's legacy for decades to come. At the same time, he also trained these Pokemon wielders, preparing for what he knows will happen to the citizens of the kingdom. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, he swooped in and saved the people. He realized that his plan could work, so he returned back to Hisui, letting the empire he so graciously saved fall into ruin. So if his age is truly as prolonged as the evidence states it is, then I think that we haven't seen the last of our dear friend Volo. He'll return, just as he promised he would to us all those hundreds of years ago.